Thank y'all all so much. Thanks for having me. Well, I'm glad I'm here, and I wasn't kidding about just that we don't have many justices that get out like he is, and he's doing great work in educating folks what's going on. Now, with regard to my taking on Boehner, I knew by announcing that there was no chance in Hades that I was going to win. The goal was to get 29 people to vote for anybody but Boehner, so he couldn't get a majority. And then we would force others to say, okay, let's agree on a compromise candidate. I knew it wouldn't be me. But that was a principled position, knowing that I was going to make some enemies, and some of them, even in Texas, stayed mad at me for years because they had already cut a deal with Boehner for the position they wanted, and by my taking the position I did, gee, it made Boehner mad at them. Can't you guys control Gohmert? The answer was no, we can't. And I had nothing personal against him, but I did have a problem with him, and that is he would not let us pursue legislation on the things that we promised, that got us the majority and got us elected. So some of you have asked already, look, so did you just get tired of Washington? Well, I mean, yeah, it gets old, but I was really looking forward to being there a year from now when we took the majority. And one of the things, you know, they got metal detectors that are just for the members of Congress to get on the House floor. And the Capitol Police Chief said, there is no evidence from any source that any member of Congress is a threat to another member. In other words, there is no legitimate reason to have metal detectors for members of Congress to go through to get on the House floor other than sheer harassment by the Speaker of the House. And it's also trying to groom members of Congress for the idea that you just have to kowtow to whoever the Speaker is and learn your role. You're down here, the Speaker's up there. And some of us will never get that down because this is America. And so she got the people in her party to kowtow and agree to those rules. And I was looking forward to pushing through a rule that said anyone that voted for the Democrats' rules in January 2021 has to abide by those same rules for the next 2 years, 23 to 25. I thought that would be nice. So that meant Democrats would be the only ones doing metal detectors and doing all that stuff, and wearing masks all the time. They have to keep doing it. And it's amazing because apparently there's this invisible barrier in the middle of the Capitol, runs right through the rotunda. And so if you come from the House end, you got to have the mask on, you got to go through the metal detectors, but you cross through that invisible barrier to the Senate half of the Capitol. Take your mask off, it's germ-free down there apparently. You don't need a mask because it's cleaner. And you get to the Senate floor. I can walk to the Senate floor, walk right on the floor. I don't have to go through a metal detector. It's amazing. The Senate half is so much better, but just so much safer than the House end. Must have something to do with Pelosi. I don't know. But anyway, and for those that don't understand, I'm being sarcastic. Okay? We know sarcasm in Texas, right? some of the biggest grief I got this past year, we were in a hearing, natural resources hearing, and we were hearing from the head of the Bureau of Land Management, and one of the heads, and she was going on and on about all we're doing at Bureau of Land Management to stop climate change. And in case y'all don't know, I am one of the few Republicans on record as totally, I said I not only believe in climate change, I know it's a fact. It is real. And where I live, we have it 4 times a year. And I know it's real. So I'm on record, I believe in climate change 4 times a year.
That's true.
But anyway, so yeah, I can be sarcastic, but this person went on and on about all they're doing to stop climate change at the Bureau of Land Management. And so I said, look, I heard from the former head of NASA, and this is true, that they have found that the moon's orbit is slightly changing around Earth, and that the Earth's orbit is slightly changing around the sun. And that's true. They say the Earth's orbit is slightly changing. And I said, so I want to know what you're doing at the Bureau of Land Management to fix the orbit of the Earth. Y'all, I understand they can't do anything. I was being sarcastic because I know they can't fix the Earth's orbit. But anyway, a lot of people went, wow, he thinks the Bureau of Land Management actually fixed the orbit. No. I was being sarcastic, pointing out, you can do all you want to, but you're not. And then we had some bozo from NASA. He sends his letter saying, and it made national media, that actually the Earth's orbit changing around the sun will have no effect on our climate. Now, how stupid do we look? And so I responded to that and pointed out that, you know, everybody I know that has any sense at all is aware if you get closer to the sun, you get warmer. If you get further from the sun, you get cooler. And apparently, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to get hired to be a rocket scientist at NASA anymore. So anyway. But
in other news, water is wet.
You don't get sarcasm.
Just in case you didn't know.
And I appreciate it. So, why would I leave Congress? Yes, I've been winning with around 3/4 of the vote in East Texas. Just good folks. And they know that if they disagree with me on a vote I took from something they've heard, like some fraudulent advertising that Paxton might do, they know if they hear something that sounds strange, well, why would he vote that way? They know that if they ask me, I can explain, and they will agree with me when I tell them, well, this bill had a poison pill in it. It had something good, but it had something far worse. And when they find out, they agree. That's why I generally win with 70 to 80% of the vote in East Texas. So why would I give that up so that I can run all over the state and run against a guy that has won statewide twice? Well, it's because our state's at risk. We're in trouble. And I never thought about running for Attorney General until the last year. It wasn't on my bucket list. You know, somebody else can take care of that. And I voted for the current AG in 2014 and 2018. But in December of 2018, I saw evidence in the presentation that I believe provided probable cause that election fraud had occurred in Dallas County in the primary and general election of 2018. Now, look, I was a felony judge, district judge for about a decade. I've signed, I don't know how many warrants, search warrants, arrest warrants, and just so many. And I've never ever been reversed on one of my warrants that I signed. Well, there wasn't probable cause. He shouldn't have signed. Never got reversed on anything. So I know something about probable cause. And it looked to me like the evidence was there. Well, some state senators asked our Attorney General after that, well, you know, he saw the evidence, I did, and said, why aren't you pursuing the election fraud in Dallas County from 2018? He said, you know, I looked at it, this is what the senator said, I looked at it, and there just wasn't enough to convict. That's not how the criminal investigation process works. You get a warrant, and you seize the evidence. And then, once you've gotten the voting machines, the software, the laptops that were used, the flash drives that had the early voting totals that were turned in to this Democrat-funded company that was hired by Dallas County to do the counting, you get all of that stuff, and then you have good people, the experts. They would show you, here is what they did, here are the votes they changed, and I'd seen some of that enough to know it should have been done. For whatever reason, our Attorney General didn't do it. Now, I know in the last month, he's been running around saying, well, look, the Court of Criminal Appeals just said that the AG doesn't have authority to prosecute election fraud. Well, the reason he didn't get a ruling like that previously was because he wasn't pursuing election fraud as he should have. And if he had been doing more of his job and supervising better those appeals, I don't believe the Court of Criminal Appeals would have the nerve to say that, because they're going to get a bunch of themselves defeated in coming elections because of that. Now a motion for rehearing has been filed, and there's a lot of us that are weighing in as friend of the court briefs, and either the Court of Criminal Appeals is going to understand what I learned in Mount Pleasant, Texas, growing up in government. They said the executive branch can't be prosecuting. Who do they think the executive branch is? For heaven's sake, the Department of Justice. That's executive branch. Anyway, they need a little more training. I don't know how many of them may have been large.
Yeah, that's the understatement of the year.
But they didn't get a good education on the three branches. And in fairness to the Court of Criminal Appeals justices, I saw a poll in the last couple of years that said, a survey, that there are more college students who can name the Three Stooges than there are college students that can name the three branches of government.
Wow.
So those justices may be in that. They can name the Three Stooges, but they can't name the three branches effectively, or
I
at
know.
least identify who
And
they
even
are.
they're smarter than that.
They either need to get educated or get off that court. But I would submit to you, the Court of Criminal Appeals are the least well-known elected statewide officials we have. But that's got to change. People have got to pay attention. Okay, so that was 2018. In 2020, there was evidence of fraud in Harris County, and citizens tried to get the Attorney General to intervene and go after him. And he said, nah, just nothing there. I mean, and so some of the private citizens pursued it. They won some case and lost others. That should have been the Attorney General. And I'm telling you, election security is so critical. If we don't get this right by 2024, our presidential election in Texas is going to be stolen. They're going to be able to produce enough votes in the 4 biggest counties we have that are governed by district attorneys that will not prosecute any Democrat shenanigans in the election. And if we don't have an attorney general that has clear authority to come in and make sure that our laws are enforced, it's going to be stolen. And I know you wouldn't be here unless you knew that a Republican cannot win the White House in our current setting unless he or she wins Texas. Won't happen. There is not a scenario where you can work it out and a Republican wins the White House without winning Texas. So I would love to have been in Washington a year from now and seen Pelosi have to go through the metal detectors and no Republicans have to go through them. I would love to have been there for all of that. But our state is at risk. Now, there were a lot of factors that went into this. Some people said, why didn't you get in last summer or last spring, like George P. Bush or Edward Guzman? Well, I've never made a career move in my life without a lot of prayer, seeking wise counsel, seeking scripture. And by the way, one of my favorites has really been helpful to me, Ecclesiastes 10:2, words to live by. A wise man's heart directs him to the right, a fool's heart directs him to the left. So anyway, good words to live by, right? I mean, it's there, look it up, Ecclesiastes 10:2, words to live. But seriously, after I ran for Congress the first time, I had people say, we heard, this were reporters, we heard you say this seemed like a calling. Did you hear voices? No, I got that. And I said, I wish I heard voices. Man, that would be nice. When I was on active duty for 4 years at Fort Benning, there was a trooper there that he heard one voice, Ms. Lee. She told him all about being this perfect soldier. And he would soldier the week and all that, everything she made sure he did. And then one day, Ms. Lee told him to kill 2 MPs and we had a problem. So I've never heard those kind of voices. Wouldn't it be great? You just hear God's voice say, do this, do that. Okay, Lord, got you. I've never heard that. So I have to read the Bible and pray and seek wise counsel. It'd be so much easier if I did, but I hadn't heard the voice. So I didn't hear voices in the past year saying, Louis, time to run for Attorney General. But another thing that occurred in October of 2020 that got my attention was when the top 7 people in the Attorney General's office, and I knew about a number of them. In fact, the top one, before I ever met him, Ted Cruz had said, Jeff Mateer is the most honest, intelligent lawyer I've ever known. Ted told him that. Well, he was the #1 assistant attorney general. He and 6 others heading up departments in the AG's office were so overwhelmed with what was going on with Attorney General Paxton, they put together a letter to the FBI saying, our boss is engaged in these facts and we believe he's guilty of bribery, abuse of his office, corruption, and you need to investigate him for those things. Well, man, that got my attention. And it's also kind of like a biblical story. They start with an affair, and then she gets fired. These are the allegations. Some of the allegations. She gets fired, and because she was working for a state senator, And Paxton's wife was a state senator, and this state senator couldn't be hiring somebody that was messing with the husband of another state senator. So she contacts the AG, I got fired because of you. You need to find me a job. I need to make $100,000 a year. And anyway, he gets a donor in Austin to hire her. Just telling you what the allegations were. And $100,000 a year. And then he starts needing favors from the AG, dealing with some of his criminal troubles, and also foreclosure on land he wants to develop. And there are a whole bunch of other allegations, but this is serious stuff. And I believe there is too much corruption in the Department of Justice and the FBI. And I told President Trump after he appointed Christopher Wray head of the FBI, I said, man, I wish that were one you'd check with me on, because Christopher Wray is on record telling Comey that Comey and Mueller are his heroes, and he wants to go anywhere they go, do whatever job they do, he wants to be with them. This was not somebody that should have been appointed. He got some bad advice on that, just like I believe he got bad advice on endorsing Paxton. But he told me again when he called a couple of days ago, he said, man, I was told you weren't running at all. And anyway, he didn't hear that from me. Must have heard it from Paxton. He didn't hear it from me. But I believe that, okay, so another factor that entered in was when I found out the election code, section 145.036. If somebody is indicted after they win the primary, it is not a basis for removing their name and replacing it with somebody else. You remove their name, but you can't replace it with somebody else. So in this kind of environment, why would a guy run for a third term? People that worked for him told me he's figuring if he gets indicted after the primary, if he's elected in the primary, then he's got some leverage to negotiate with the DOJ. Okay, I will withdraw my name, or I won't campaign if you'll recommend no jail time for this stuff. Whatever the reason is, it infuriated me that he would risk Texas and risk the AG's office going to a Democrat to help himself. And I know I hear all over the state, yeah, but isn't he doing a great job? He isn't doing half the job I would have done. I would have gone after election fraud. And by the way, he's got over 750 lawyers. We got 254 counties. We ought to have somebody from the Attorney General's office, a lawyer. And we got between 3,000 and 4,000 employees in that office. There ought to be a staffer and an attorney in every county, at least one, in the state on election days, and all the poll watchers know, here's the number. You see anything you think is illegal, improper, you call this number. He has the number, the location of the judge. He can get an injunction to stop any impropriety. That ought to be part of the job that the Attorney General is doing to protect Texas. And I would be doing that. And the thing that made, and this really galled me, I got a call from the Attorney General in Louisiana. He's a friend. He talks like a Cajun, but he's a really good guy. Jeff Landry. And once you get to understanding Cajun, it's easier to understand Jeff. But he was chairman of the Republican Attorney General Association, and he called and we talked time to time. And he said, Louis, we need a state to sue the swing states that had the governor or secretary of state change their election laws instead of doing it through their legislature. Because the U.S. Constitution says any change to those laws has to be done by the state legislature. And Jeff went on to say, and we don't want Texas to file it because your governor changed some of the election laws just like those swing states did. And I knew what he was talking about, and we agreed. And after we talked about it for a while, we agreed probably it'd be good if we got Alan Wilson, the AG, Joe Wilson's son, the AG in South Carolina, to file the suit because their governor, their secretary of state didn't change any election laws. You can't sue other states for doing something you yourself did. You don't have the doctrine is clean hands. You don't have clean hands. So he doomed that lawsuit the moment he filed it. Why did he file it? Because the narrative hitting the press in Austin was about his 7 top people filing a referral with the FBI on his misconduct. So he changed the narrative. He became a national hero, but he doomed that suit the moment he filed it. That was selfish. I want to save Texas so we can save the Union. I'm putting my future at risk, and it's a risk worth taking so we can try to save Texas and save our nation. The greatest nation God has ever given a people, talking to Pastor a while ago. I mean, this country has done more to spread the gospel around the world than any nation in world history since Jesus. And we've been blessed, I believe, as a result. But this nation's in big trouble. So to me, it's worth risking the end of my political career. Wouldn't that be nice? But I think there's more work for me to do. That's why I'm going all over the state. That's why I'm seeking your vote, your support for Attorney General. A lot of you that have spoken to me, you've seen me around. You know I'm a fighter. I've been a litigator before I was a judge. And in fact, one of our current Supreme Court justices, he used to dread our statewide judicial conferences because I always made him uncomfortable asking questions from the audience that embarrassed him. I've always, that's from my mother. My dad, the strong silent type, lost last March. I started wearing his Aggie ring instead of mine. But my mother was the one that would always stand up and say, that's not right. And you know it's not right. Whether it's a preacher, mayor, whoever. Well, that's my job now. And it will be an honor if you allow me to be your Attorney General, because we're in for a fight to save Texas. Thank you very much.
That's right.